Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Covering All Topics with your host, yours truly, Bryce Rankowitz, and the world famous AJ the Cat, Catanzaro.
What's up, guys?
So, we want to thank everybody for listening to our first episode. A little trial run for you. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. We hope to be bringing you some good content coming up on a pretty consistent basis here for you to enjoy. So before we get into this episode, I want to give a shout out to Jay Kavanaugh at Rack Racing. This podcast has the support of guys like Jay at Rack Racing. Rack, as a lot of you know, is one of AJ's biggest supporters. Rack is a race team that Jay conceptualized and brought to life recently that is really such a cool concept and something that not only the moto world can benefit from, but the world in general. And, I said it last episode, Jay is just such a great guy. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. Enthusiastic, fun, high energy, is just such a great guy. And Rack Racing, Rack, for those of you who don't know, stands for Random Acts of Kindness. And Jay's kind of mission is to, with every donation, every contribution to his program, he turns that around into a random act of kindness. I mean, you'd think of something that could be conceived as kind, and he'll do it. I mean, from donating an entire neighborhood worth of free ice cream from an ice cream truck to just buying somebody, paying it forward with a bill. Tip the bill. Some of you have probably heard the tip the bill challenge. I mean, he's doing stuff that is bringing joy to so many people and encouraging his team members and the community to do that as well. And he really practices what he preaches. I encourage you all to give him a follow on Instagram, Rack Racing. He's always giving inspirational messages, kind of giving some great tips and tools on how to conquer each day, conquer adversity, conquer the mental aspect of not only moto, but life. And also check out his race team and see if you can get involved with Jay. So we appreciate Jay. I'm so grateful to have him in my life. And we thank him for the support that he offers AJ as well.
Yeah, I highly recommend checking out Jay's Instagram. I mean, it's, if nothing else, like it definitely, you wake up in the morning and you start flicking through his Instagram stories, and it's kind of a good way to start the day. So absolutely grateful to have him on our side, and I think he'll surprise you with, it's not just moto related. You listen to these things, and anything he teaches and preaches, it can be applied in absolutely any aspect of life, whether it's moto, whether it's work, relationships, whatever it may be.
Check them out, everybody. So this episode, we're going to do a little recap of AJ's recent trip to Ecuador. He had an academy down there that looked like a heck of a time. So I'm anxious to hear about that. This is the first time I'm talking to AJ since he got back this morning. So we're going to do a real-time debrief. And then I would encourage everybody to stick around for the second half of the podcast. I think a lot of the moto people are going to really like what AJ has to say about Ecuador. But for those who are not necessarily involved with moto and are interested in some of the cool stuff we have going on, we're going to bring in one of our reoccurring themes of the podcast that we're going to bring to you, and that's the questions and answers. So you can submit questions either for AJ or for both of us, whether it be from a moto standpoint, training, exercise, anything like that. You could submit questions to questions.catpodcast@gmail.com. And part of our shtick is we're going to answer some questions based on what they are, maybe before each episode or at the end of each episode, depending on how it fits the theme. But the very first question that we got was so good in capturing one of the biggest themes that I think this podcast is going to be about, that we're going to open up with it and really devote the second half of the podcast to covering, or really just scratching the surface of what that question entails. So stick around for that. I really think it's going to be a good discussion, a lot of benefit that expands way outside of moto. So stick around for that. But now I'd like to hear from AJ because he just had a heck of a trip. So AJ, Ecuador, let's hear it, man. Looked like a heck of a time.
If I fall asleep on this podcast, don't blame me because I did not.
What time did you get in?
Like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. And I didn't sleep at all. I had the whole road to myself. I was like, all right, this is awesome. I started opening up my pillows and my blankets and setting up my bed, and it was the worst flight of my life.
Yikes.
I don't know what happened. I think I was overconfident that I was going to get some sleep in. But real quick before we dive into that, I have, I guess before we start each episode, I'll just kind of give you guys a little insight on what's coming up as far as classes go. So Monday, November 12th, we have Tomahawk MX. I'm going to be back there for a night class. I know I haven't done that since I think the beginning of summer because I've been so busy. So, email me at catanzaroracing@gmail.com to RSVP for that. And then we got Deepwoods MX in Warrenton, North Carolina. That's November 16th, 17th. Contact Deepwoods MX directly to get signed up for that one. That'll be my first time at that location, so pretty pumped about that. Yeah, as far as Ecuador, I mean, you and I were talking about it. Of course, you're my go-to guy. So when I got the invite to Ecuador, you were one of the first people I was like, well, Bryce, do I go? Is this place safe? Like, what is it all about? And I can't even like put into work. It was probably one of the more fun trips I've done in a long time.
It's a bucket list for me, man. I mean, Ecuador proper and Quito looked awesome. I want to go to the Galapagos so bad.
Right. So since this one was such a success, that's what for when I go back, whether it's in a couple months or next year, I'm going to time it so that I can do a 2 or 3 day class and then go to the Galapagos after.
Right. How far away were you from the Galapagos?
I don't know. I think maybe an hour and a half flight.
Okay. They don't fly into the Galapagos, do they?
Yeah, I think
you have to charter a boat. Isn't that one of the things? Yeah, they're
I
like
have no idea.
little islands. I think, and they don't allow, you can't just like go, you just can't take a boat there because it's so environmentally protected. You have to charter a boat, and there's only specific ways you can get there, I believe.
Oh, well, I have no idea. I need to research that some more before I buy a plane ticket that doesn't exist.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you could take like a puddle jumper over there. That'd be cool.
But the place was amazing. The people, and Jeremiah Ellis, my mechanic, went with me, and he's so cool in that way. Like, we were in California for Straight Rhythm, and I got the message from Mateo that, said, hey, you want to come out and do a 5-day class? And of course I say yes to everything. So I'm just like, yeah, let's do it. I asked Jeremiah, and he's like, oh, sure. Okay. Like, didn't even ask anything. He's like, sure. Yeah. And he used to be such the polar opposite of me. And I think he's learning, like, you don't regret saying yes to these situations. I mean, granted, we could have got there and it could have been a totally different situation than what it was. I think we were very lucky to have Matteo Restrepo, who did all my translation. We stayed with him. He like treated us like we were family. So it definitely could have gone the opposite. But I think that's just the sport. That's just how it is. Everyone kind of has the same mission, and everyone is so friendly and just wants to help each other. It's pretty awesome.
So how do you know Matteo? Like, how did this actually come about? And you've done some pretty exotic trips. You had a class in Dubai, which was awesome. How do you have these relationships? Do people approach you at random? Like, how did you get this invite?
Well, typically it's a little bit of everything. I try to just be friendly with everyone you meet because you never know. I mean, you never know who they have connections with or who somebody is. But this one, I believe Matteo just sent me a message on Instagram. And this is like, I think most people not that I have a lot of followers, I have 50,000 followers or something like that, but I get a good amount of messages and I make sure that I respond to every single one. And I don't think a lot of people do that. But again, like you never know.
Gary Vee does it. That's one of Gary Vee. You ever see that interview with Gary Vee where he said he spent however long he sat like all night long, like literally from like 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. He went through like and responded to every single Twitter post. I don't know if he still does it, but he's talked about that before. Is putting the energy and responding to this stuff. So I think,
Right.
I mean, hey, it
I
obviously
mean,
works.
it could make somebody's day. It could introduce you to somebody like this that if I hadn't responded to that, I would have never experienced this like 5 day trip that I'll never forget. So for me, yeah, I mean, if I let those messages rack up for 2 or 3 days, I would never be able to catch up. But as long as I'm on top of it and responding to people, I know they appreciate it, and it makes me feel good when they appreciate it. And then, it just opens up opportunities. That's how this one formed. I want to say that's how the Dubai class formed. Um, a lot of these exotic ones that I've been going on, it's all transpired through Instagram, which is kind of crazy.
No, that's awesome though. I mean, that's like the 21st century, 2018. That's where relationships are. Social media. Everybody knows it. So that's awesome. Um, so you get down to Ecuador. I mean, what's your plan of attack? Obviously, you have the academy scheduled. You did 5 days, 5 full days of the academy.
Yeah, so when I tell you we had no plan, I mean we had no plan. Me, Jeremiah, and
So
myself,
typical.
yeah, it's and I, yeah, that's kind of my MO, I guess. Jeremiah and myself connected together in Miami, so we flew together from Miami to Quito. Um, and on the plane, we're kind of looking at each other like he just looks at me and laughs, and I know why he's laughing. He's like, typical AJ move, like books this trip, and he goes, "So where are we staying?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. Who are we staying with?" Jeremiah, I have no idea, man. What? How many riders do we have? I, no idea. Like we went into it with zero idea. I didn't know if it was going to be a goat trail cut through the woods or if it was going to be a legitimate motocross track. I didn't know how many riders. I didn't know what the weather was going to really be like. Um, so I had an idea of what I could cover in an ideal situation. I've never done a 5 day like 5 days with the same group. Um,
Oh, so the same group the whole time?
right, which is pretty gnarly. I mean, like it's a lot of stuff to cover. So for me, I could break down my structure of my 1 day class and just give each topic a day, which is essentially what I did, but I just spiced it up a bit because if I talked about braking for a whole day, I think I would lose everyone.
Yeah.
So I spiced it up. Like the last day we did stagger start races. We incorporated like a joker lane that you could do once per race. We just every day we did something that was pretty cool. One day we did a challenge where um we had like this really tight figure eight setup, and if you could do 4 laps around the figure eight standing up without dabbing your foot, um, you got like a shout out on my Instagram, and no one got it. um,
Really?
yeah, the only ones that could do it were Mateo and myself because you're only allowed 10 dabs, so like you could only put your foot on the ground 10 times and then you were eliminated.
Right.
Um, and yeah, it was such a tight technical figure eight. Like you would see people do 1 lap around the figure eight and they would dab 10 times within the 1 lap and they'd get eliminated. But it was just little fun things like that to spice it up. We had, I want to say 13 riders. So it was for me, it was a nice small group. And the coolest part about it is even though none of them really spoke a lick of English, it was like I was so bonded with them at the end of the 5 days where I go in for these 1 day classes, and a lot of these are big group settings, which, my academy is expanding. We have to go a route where things get bigger and bigger. I try to keep it as personalized as possible. But when you have 40 guys in a day, it's tough to, at the end of that day, it's hard.
Yeah, you're not making those individual connections
Yeah, I
as
try,
much.
and I think I pride myself, and the people that help me with the classes, I think do a really good job with that as well because it's very important. I mean, to give somebody, even if it's 15 seconds of one-on-one attention, it's important to give them that 15 seconds. But with the 13 riders for 5 straight days, it was like we went through hell and back with these guys. We were in such dusty conditions you couldn't see. The next day it was so muddy. They were riding without their
Yeah.
goggles. It was just like,
No, I was following some pictures and videos you were posting of the track. I want to talk about the track in a little bit, but how you keep the focus for everyone? Was it hard, or were they engaged from the first minute to the last minute of day 5?
they were super engaged. I think a lot of that too is they don't take opportunities like that for granted. I don't think they have people coming down there all that often to teach courses like that. So I think they were definitely appreciative of that, and they wanted to be there. It wasn't like, their parents signed them up and they had to be there. Everyone that was there really wanted to be there. And I keep it fun. I like I said, I personally I could go out and teach braking all day long and be dead serious about it and spend 7 hours talking about braking. But who the heck wants to do that? So I don't know. I mean, I can't wait to go back. It was such a cool group of people. I tried to learn as much Spanish as I could, but all I really took away from it was swear words.
Of course. Right. So there's got a 2-part question. We'll go through it one at a time. Ecuador is, we'll call it a developing nation, right? I mean, it's not exactly known for its wealth. So how do you think that the individuals who are there, motocross is not an inexpensive sport, right? I mean, it takes, even for used equipment, there, and you consider a developing country, it's a substantial investment to get involved in something like that. Did you find that they were more appreciative of your time, or not to take anything away from your classes here, but was there more of a sentimentality to it because of that?
I think just in general, I think their culture in general just made for that type of vibe. Because right, it's not cheap. Like, how much does a new 450 cost here? Not 9 grand.
Yeah.
I want to say, and they told me the number in Spanish, so I could be wrong here. I'm pretty sure they said a new 450 was $17,000 for a new Husky 450.
I would fact check that only because there's got to be factors like conversion, of
No, but
what do they use down there?
They use American dollars.
Oh, really? Oh, so
Yeah,
maybe it's just from like the importing. There's got to be a big import
yeah, and I
tariff or
guess
tax or some
they
issue.
said when they buy used bikes, which they would try to do and ship them in from the U.S. It again, this could be wrong. We might need to fact check this, but they said they have to pay 100 or 200% of the cost of the bike. And I'm like,
Wow.
wait, that doesn't make sense. But there was a huge billboard right at the track that had a picture of a Honda 250F, and it said like 13,500 for a Honda
Yikes.
250F, and I was like, holy cow! And
Yeah.
I don't know. It was hard to get a read. Like, I was asking Mateo about house prices, and that all the house prices seemed pretty low. The minimum wage seemed pretty high. The biggest thing there is there's no middle class, like zero. I'm talking, you have people living on the streets, and then you have people like Mateo and his family, and basically everyone that was at the dirt bike track that I would probably have to consider as middle upper class or upper class, because how else are you going to afford a $15,000 bike that in 6 months the thing's destroyed?
Yeah. I just looked. Wages in Ecuador in 2017, the average was 437 US dollars a month. So
Wait,
just to put it in perspective,
$4.37?
$437 per month is the
Wow.
average wage, right? Yeah.
Yikes.
So just, put it in perspective there. That's a lot of money for a freaking motorcycle if it's 13 grand.
Right. Right. And I
Um,
don't know what these people do for jobs that are living there that are actually, making the money to be able to afford. I don't know. and it wasn't necessarily even what I expected. I mean, I think the areas I was in, I stayed in an area called Kumbaya, and
Okay.
it was just kind of like a nice area, and then you would drive, you know, a mile or a kilometer down the road, and you were in like not dirt roads, but like just battered brick roads with like, people walking around and cooking things on the street and like dogs just walking everywhere. I mean, it's
Right.
it's definitely different.
Right. So give me like the 50,000 foot view of motocross in Ecuador. I mean, what's the scene like? Are there tracks pretty sparse? Are they common? Like, how big is the sport? And then let's talk about the skill of those riders that attended your class.
Oh, you know
So
what?
give us kind of an. Go
That's
ahead.
one thing I definitely was super impressed with. Like, um, I think that there's more tracks there than I had ever thought. Um,
Really,
which
that's
is crazy
surprising.
to me. It's very surprising. And I still don't understand how. Um, and like the track that we rode was darn good. I mean, they were tilling it and prepping it and watering it, and I've ridden much worse tracks than what that one was.
Was it a
It,
private facility? Was it a landowner?
it's
What was
a
the?
public track. It's actually Martin Davalos' brother that owns it and runs it.
No kidding.
Yeah. I don't know how actually involved he is. I never met him. And somebody else was running it when I was there. But yeah, apparently he's the owner of it. But as far as skill level goes, like the 12 riders that we had blew away any of the classes I've had in the States. Like,
Wow, that's surprising to me.
it doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. Maybe they just watch it so much that maybe I got lucky with the group of 12 people that I had. We had one girl rider, Margarita was her name. Um, one of the best girl riders I've ever seen. Not
Oh shit!
necessarily the
Wow.
fastest, but just like technically sound. And I don't know if maybe Mateo has been working with a lot of these people and he's just doing a great job with them. But and they listen really well. Like, a lot of times I'm talking to these people and I feel like as if I'm talking to a wall, and they're so worried about going fast that they can't slow down to fix what they need to fix.
Right.
And everyone in this class was super willing to just slow down and listen. And even
I
when we
want that's
opened it
got to
up for
be a
the place,
cultural difference. There's got to be a cultural difference that
yeah,
allows that,
I
and I
agree.
think you know, not to make any general blanket statements about kids in your classes, that this is not applying to them, but I think that there's just a general sense like that here kids, I mean, you see it all over the place with like per, school sports and even club sports. Like parents think that their kids are a lot better than they actually are, and they demand. It's always the parents demanding this or that, or my kid
Right.
deserves to play, my kid deserves this, my kid is better, and then they get a sense that they're better than they are, and then they show up to like some sort of instruction and kind of get put in their place, that maybe they're not as good as that they think they are, their
And they
parents
don't
think
want to
they
hear
are,
it.
and then they don't want to hear it, and then they're not as receptive to constructive criticism, you know?
I totally agree. Totally agree. And they're entitled to, they think that they deserve this and that. And then when I give them any type of criticism, and again, this isn't a blanket statement, like not everyone is like this, but
Right. I'm
I,
sure all the kids at your class are awesome. Nothing against anybody. Like,
but I would definitely agree with that statement. Like I would say, America as a whole is generally more like that. I just think that this group was just, they were just so happy to be there. And I mean, it made me pumped. I mean, 5 days of teaching classes, like I was exhausted. But every day I'd get up and I'd go there and they gave me a little bit of energy to keep going.
yeah. And I mean, they're giving 100% and while they're there, right?
Right. And if they weren't at the end of those 5 days, I would have been like, get me the heck out of here. But 5 days flew by and I could have kept going.
Yeah,
But
that's great. I mean,
it
that is
was,
cool to hear. I'd be really just curious as like what are the factors that contributed to that? I mean, are you, would you say, maybe you didn't get a sense of this, but would you say that they are representative of the higher or highest level riders there? Or do you think that this is just kind of a good random sampling of the riders in Ecuador? And you think, I mean, I'm not familiar with any of the top riders from Ecuador, but um, can you
Um,
speak to that a little bit?
well, like as you say that, it just made me think of this. Maybe because it's such a financial commitment for them to do it, maybe they just take it more seriously and really put the work in and dedicate themselves to it. I I don't know. I mean, the track was closed to anybody but our 12 people, 13 people doing the class. So it's not like I was able to see anyone else ride. It very well could have just been a good group of riders. Um,
Right.
that's tough to say. But
Hmm.
no, it was such a fun trip, and 5 days flew by. Like we had no free time. That we had, I think, 3 or 4 hours after the last day of classes where we went to the center. I guess they call it the center of the world, where we went to the equator line.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
That was pretty
That's
cool.
cool.
And I did some
Did you test the
research on that.
oh, let's hear it. Let's
Yeah.
hear your
Okay.
research. You
Okay.
the Coriolis effect? Did you
Yes.
flush toilets on either side? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the Coriolis effect I was trying to figure out, and the first article I clicked into, it must have been some flat Earth person like writing about it because they said that it's not real, and I was like, I believed
Dude,
it.
it's a hoax. How could the Earth be round?
It didn't say anything about the Earth not being round, but it said that
Oh,
the
it's just flat.
Coriolis effect wasn't real. And I forget what else it said, but I was like, and that was the first article I clicked into. So I was like, oh, so the whole water thing they do when they're there and it spins one way. I'm like, all right, so it's BS. And then luckily I clicked into another article and another one, and then I watched some like more reputable videos on it. Um, and I actually have a rudimentary understanding of it, but like I can maybe explain it to you. So, and I'm sure
Oh,
you
I
know,
could
but
explain it to you better than you can explain it to
okay,
me, I
well,
can
you
assure
might
you.
be impressed. You might be impressed. So, okay,
Go
so
ahead.
the Earth is a sphere. So obviously the
No,
equator.
what's a sphere?
Uh,
Oh,
I don't
just
know how
kidding.
to describe a
Keep
sphere.
going. I like where this is headed.
Okay, the Earth is a sphere. So the equator is the imaginary, basically center line dividing the southern hemisphere. So the the where the equator sits is the longest distance to travel around the Earth. So from if you're at
Also
the
known as a circumference.
yes. So wait, so the distance around the Earth. So I guess the circumference of the Earth is 24,000 miles at the equator.
Right.
And if you went to, let's say, Canada and did a circle around the Earth, the circumference may only be 13,000 miles. So
Sounds about right.
in one day's time, if you're at the equator, one rotation around the Earth, you're traveling 1,000 miles an hour, if I remember this
Okay.
correctly. So you're traveling 1,000 miles an hour to do one day rotation. So 24 hours, 1,000 miles an hour. If you go to Canada, you're only traveling 550 miles an hour around the Earth. So the Coriolis effect, or however you say it, is if something was, let's say, you're a cloud floating from the equator up to Canada, you're gonna go further and further right, because see, now this is where I get confused. But that's how it works. So then if you're at the equator and you were to go south, and let's say you're a cloud floating south, you would go further and further left. So the whole thing with the water and the toilets flushing, I did research on this because they had a person there where they have this like a little tub and they fill it with water. Let's say they stand in the southern hemisphere. They fill this tub with water and it drains down to the left.
Counterclockwise, right.
Correct, counterclockwise. And then they go to the northern hemisphere and it drains clockwise. And then they go to the equator and it goes straight down. And I'm like, oh,
Yep.
that's amazing. Like how, but that's BS. And now listen to my
So
explanation.
you tested this theory.
No, technically I didn't know, but I maybe should have. So the effect is so
It's BS, but I didn't test it.
Okay, so if you were to go to Antarctica and the North Pole or wherever the heck, go to your northernmost point and go to your southernmost point, and you did that test, then yes, it would work. But if you're at the equator and you're only talking a couple feet difference, the way the water is introduced to the tub is the way that it's going to spin. So these people would pour the water in, and if they're in the southern hemisphere, they would put a little twist on the bucket, and it would make it spin to the left. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's being kind of artificially demonstrated.
Right.
Although conceptually it works. It's real. They add a little bit of a flair to it.
You would have to be
to dramatize it, right?
From the equator, not 4 feet from the equator.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to know because
I sound smart.
Yeah, I think you did a heck of a job there. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I really figured that if you're on the northern hemisphere, it spun clockwise, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, it spun counterclockwise. But I can see where they could make that happen if they wanted to. Just slosh the water a little bit to the left or what have you, and you'll get a more dramatic result. I could see that
because you're.
But the Coriolis effect is real. It is real. I mean,
100% real.
And
unless the Earth's flat somehow.
We're not even going to entertain that idea in this podcast. No, God, no. No, but you hear snipers talk about it all the time that sometimes there's shots that are at range where the rotation of the Earth is coming into play with the path of that bullet, and they have to account for that and during the flight time of the bullet. So, I mean, it is a real demonstrable physical thing. Yep. Yeah.
But it was cool to go there nonetheless, and I did a little bit of research, so I learned something new.
Love it. Aren't those trips like the kind of the best though, where you fly by the seat of your pants? You don't really have a plan. I remember going to Jen and I went to Rome a couple years ago, and we literally, I mean, we picked a spot online that looked all right to stay at, and it was good. But we got on the plane. We didn't know how to get there. We didn't really know the airport that well. We didn't have any We didn't have any transportation. I mean, we walked the entire time we were there. But luckily, on the flight over, I think what did we take? Ryanair. They go around and they sell you bus tickets. The flight attendants will have bus tickets, and we bought a bus ticket from a flight attendant. And we just happened to get there. We got to the hotel. Everything worked out perfectly. We didn't have a plan at all. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know where we were in relation to any of the sites in Rome. But we got there, and it turned out to be the coolest trip because we spent all the time like exploring. We saw all the ruins. We went to Travestiere. Like we did all of the sites in Rome, and it was just spectacular. But it made for such a fun trip.
That's unlike.
I know, isn't it? I know. Trust me, it's unlike us, and but that's what made it fun. Like we just kind of gave in to the experience, and that's what made it cool.
Oh, you know me. I've learned to fully just do whatever comes my way. I mean, I used to have and I still do at times, like an anxiety issue where I worry about certain things, but. Man, if you just go, and I just have a strong belief that if I just work hard and I just keep going down these paths of just kind of saying yes to these things, that it's going to just lead me the right way and things will kind of work themselves out. And knock on wood, everything that I'm doing, it seems to be going the right way for me. And these trips, there's no plan. And like I said before, Jeremiah would, and I'm sure we'll have him on here as a guest eventually, but he can attest to it. He would have schedules, and his finances are written down to the T, and I'm sure he still does that, which is smart. But he was such a planner, and not to just kind of embrace the we'll figure it out. And that's not to say you should be like that in every aspect. You should have goals and plan things, but it just makes for a fun time.
Yeah, I mean, I just think just giving into the experience every once in a while makes for a really fun trip. I'll tell you what, if you we need to get, I don't know what the motocross scene in Iceland is, but if you ever come across somebody on Instagram who's inviting you to Iceland to do a class, you better jump on that. I know we've talked about Iceland before. Dude, I would go back there in a second. And like the terrain out there a lot of it's protected, but I'll tell you what, if there's a motocross, or even enduro riding
out there, like a bunch of them. Ryan Hughes does classes out there, and he says he loves it. So I'm
dude,
sure
you gotta go. I'll go with you. I'll go with you.
I've been wanting to go badly too.
I know that place is so amazing, amazing. But
yeah, I'm just trying to travel. I'm trying to get as many free vacations as I can. That's really not
a bad gig, right? It's not a vacation. You're working. You're putting in work. You worked 5 days in a row.
I work my butt off, but I love it.
So, yeah,
I love it.
Right.
If it was if it was a shitty group of riders that just didn't want to be there, and were arguing my points and or not listening, then yeah, that would have been work. But the group of riders that I have at pretty much every single class I've ever held, it makes it fun.
I want to go back to the riders again because I thought of a question I want to ask you. Was there any common themes, either good or bad, in their riding techniques that you could attribute to just them all being from outside of the U.S.? Like, was there any distinguished features of their riding that you either had to break or run with?
That's a good question. Yes, but nothing that was like Ecuador specific, I would say. Like, I think that commonly the biggest mistake and the biggest thing I have to unteach is clutch abuse. And
that's for everybody, including me.
That's for including me. I mean, I'm pretty good with the clutch, but when I get in a race situation and shit's hitting the fan, yeah, then I start using my clutch more than I should. They were pretty bad with that at first, but they were open to listening to lay off of it a lot more than they were. But nothing that I can think of that was specific to them.
Do you see? You've done a couple international classes now.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a theme in the United States versus outside of the U.S.?
No, I was gonna say like, yeah, maybe some people want to just scrub more and like be flashy, but that's kind of an issue everywhere too. Like at all of my classes, what the one question I have to always deflect is, "Hey AJ, how do I scrub?" I'm like, man,
let's get the basics first.
If you're asking me that question, then you're not ready to learn it. Like right. Scrubbing and whipping comes with going fast enough to the point where you have to do something to get your wheels back on the ground.
I have the perfect answer for you that you can use. I'll let you use it. Okay, I'm giving it to you. Okay. All right. You say Travis Pastrana does not know how to scrub, and he doesn't know how to whip either. So, and he will admit it, and he just put it on his Instagram a few days ago. He goes, "I never learned how to whip." So,
yeah, his whips are terrible, but they don't matter.
They don't matter.
Corner for show or corner for dough. Wait, what is it? What? Jump for show, corner for dough.
There you go.
Everyone can jump.
Yeah, but you can't just post videos of cornering on Instagram and be cool. Like, everybody knows that. You need some scrubs in there, right? That's what it's all about. Do it for the gram.
Yeah.
You should have an AJ Academy Instagram edition where you don't care about results or performance or technique. It's if you want to boost your Instagram game, come learn from AJ how to ride cool. I think it's a whole new niche for you.
They just need to message Axel Hodges if that's the case.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's about as steezy as you can get right there. Anything else you want to cover on
questions? Well,
what's up?
Let me think. Let me think back to this trip.
Did you partake in any of the Ecuadorian nightlife? Like, how was that? You get to check it out at all, or are you too tired?
No, so it's different. I mean, like, it's like a community. Like, I was trying to explain it to my girlfriend because a couple of nights I was having to explain myself why we got back at 2 a.m. But it's like, I don't know, like the music has everyone just like, like people just like dance together, and it's like, it's that is very different than the United States. It's like, it's not, I feel like if you were to go into like a bar scene, or not that this was a bar, but like, I guess kind of, if you were to go into a bar or club in the United States, it's a bunch of insecure guys that are just like trying to like be full of themselves and like puff their chest in the air, and it just makes for an uncomfortable environment. And it's not like that in Ecuador at all. It's just like everyone was talking to everybody, and it's very like, it's just,
Yeah, it's like a community good vibe as opposed to
right.
like this individual like predator males.
Right. Yeah. Which, gosh, I hate that.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
no,
So I mean,
it was
give everybody kind of one takeaway if they ever considered going to Ecuador or even considered riding in Ecuador. What would be your kind of main message about Ecuador, and your message to the people of Ecuador for being your host?
Okay, so my advice for anyone going would be learn some Spanish, because very few people there knew enough English to communicate with you. So
And that's a good note, because like there's a lot of places that you can use English and get by pretty darn well. I'd say anywhere in Europe,
pretty
well,
much
even a
anywhere
lot of the
I've
South
been.
American countries.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, pretty much anywhere I've been okay speaking English, but here not so much. Like, yeah, Mateo and a lot of the people I could have a conversation with no problem. But some of them I found myself using more sign language and like my seventh grade knowledge of Spanish to try to communicate. Um, Learn Spanish. So many people speak Spanish. Like, do you know how to speak Spanish?
un poquito,
Oh, so a little bit.
just a little bit.
Yeah,
Only from high school and what I remember, but
right.
I really could not carry a conversation.
No, like with them talking, I could pick out a word here or there. If it's written down, I can usually pick out 3 or 4 words and then kind of piece the sentence together and figure it out. I actually did pretty well. Like, but that's definitely when you go there, expect that, especially in these suburbs and like the smaller towns. Maybe if you went to downtown Quito, it's a little different. But being in Kumbaya, being in the suburbs, um, they don't know a whole lot of English. But
Good
um,
advice.
I even found like this morning I got off the metro back at my place, and I went to go order a breakfast sandwich that down below the restaurant in my apartment, and they're all Spanish ladies in there. And I walked in, I was like, "Hola," and then I said "gracias" at the end. Like, I don't, totally by mistake. But you hear
Oh,
that? You hear what I
I
just said?
heard it. I heard it.
I'm starting to get it right.
See, I
Okay,
keep drilling this in you.
have we explained to the people
We,
listening what I
no,
always mess up? Explain to
nope.
them, because I know it
So
drives you up a wall.
AJ, honestly, this might be
Are you
my
proud?
biggest pet peeve with you. I'm proud of you right now, because AJ will say, I did this on accident. And I don't think we can cough this up to regional diction. I think this is just like a mistake in grammar. And we've talked about it before, because some people, New York, you go to New York, and instead of waiting in line at a store, they'll say, I'm waiting online at a store, which is very bizarre to hear when you first hear it.
Yeah,
But
that's
we
weird.
can cough that up to a regional diction thing, and it's just what they say there. But when people say on accident, I want to snap their necks. I mean, really, it's the bottom line. It is the English phrase is, I did it by accident. And I've been saying this to AJ for years, and he just used it in proper context, and I feel like a proud father right now.
Yeah, I think that's the first time that it's naturally flown out of my mouth that way.
Completely naturally flown out. You didn't have to think about it. You literally just said it, and it caught you so off guard that you even said it perfectly. You made a big thing about it.
Wow.
I
Maybe I
love
broke
it.
maybe I finally broke the habit.
Yes. Oh, I could only hope.
Uh,
Oh, I'm so
what the heck
proud.
was I talking about? Oh, anyways, I did it on accident.
Oh, for Christ's sakes! You
Yeah, they
just
gave me
said
this
it.
look like, does this boy know how to
Did you
speak
just say on
Spanish?
accident on purpose?
I did it on purpose.
Okay, all right. Thank God. Okay,
Wait,
okay.
is it on purpose or by purpose?
Oh God.
It's on purpose, but
On
by accident?
Isn't that something?
Why does that make any sense?
I don't know.
On
Why is rough spelled with Rough? I don't know. But anyways, so you talked to them by accident on purpose in Spanish, and they loved it.
Yeah, but
Okay,
I'm just glad that I was lucky they didn't go any further in the conversation because that was about all I had.
cool.
Yep,
Love it.
cool.
All right. So, Ecuador trip success. I'm anxious to find out where you're going next. Like, where in the world is AJ Catanzaro? I love it. That'll be your next YouTube series, and you'll keep it a secret until you're there.
Man, I've definitely been busy. I need to take a couple days and sit at home. It seems like it's never ending. It's a good problem to have, I guess.
It certainly is. Certainly is. Well, I want to. We've already been talking for 45 minutes. I want to get into the next little segment here that we alluded to before, and that is the questions. And I don't know if they're always going to take up as much time as I think this one could take up. We'll keep it as brief as we can and still cover it. But
I could see this one taking up a lot of time.
Yeah, I agree, and I think for the sake of this can be an entire podcast series based on this question, and it's something you and I
And this was the first question we ever got.
We set up the email, we posted the email, is the very first one, and I think it's so fitting. Let me read the question, and then we could kind of get into why it's so important, what we've talked about so many times, you and I.
Hey, real quick, Bryce.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here with my leg crossed, and I have about 25 mosquito bites on my legs. Do you think I have to worry about like, Zika virus?
Zika? I don't know. You can. I mean, we'll talk offline. I know that. Yeah. I mean, maybe. And I don't think you're planning on having babies for 6 months or more. But
Was that the
I don't know.
concern with
I haven't. I've only kept tabs on the Zika in the United States, and they pulled it off of Florida, which is the only place I was going that exposed me to it. So.
Okay, but that brings me.
That's
to
a good point. But
bring or buy bug spray because holy cow. I was loading it up. Like I loaded my legs. So the first day for day one of class, I wore shorts. Did not make that mistake again. Like the rest of the days, I geared up in my gear, even though I didn't ride that much, just so I had layers on. But I would layer myself with bug spray and then do a layer of sunscreen and then another layer of bug spray. Just to try to keep them away. And they're like, if you saw me right now, I'm covered. I look like I have chicken pox.
Yikes.
So I definitely got, I got hepatitis. I got Zika, along with a couple other nice diseases.
All right. Well, I'm going to pull up this question. I'm going to read it, and then we'll do a little talk about it. It'll just be really kind of just a little hint at what we can get to and what I think we're going to try to cover in later podcasts and a big overall theme that we're going to discuss. And let me read this question. This question comes from a young man, Alec, from Minnesota. He says, during races, I usually play it too safe and am cautious. Last race, someone was right behind me, and I somehow clicked into another zone and pulled way ahead of him. I went way faster and felt better than I ever have, all without being sketchy. How do I get into this zone more often? This question blew me away. Alec, thank you, because this is a question that AJ and I and many others wrestle with all of the time. How do we tap into our potential?
Did he say how old he was?
He didn't, no. And I can't really tell from the little avatar picture, I'll be honest. But
because if he's a younger kid or even a teenager, like that's a very smart question to ask. You're on the right track.
Dude,
if you're asking that question and aware and conscious of that you have to focus on that and practice that, he's one step ahead of the game already.
For sure. I mean, but how many times have you and I, and look, I'm not a pro athlete. I'm just trying to perform at my peak during the things that I like to do, and whether that be self competitiveness or a Swift race or a real time mountain bike race or what have you. I mean, you go out for days and you feel like crap, and you think that you've trained and you think that you're prepared, and you very well could be. And I'm in that situation all the time. I'm like, why? Some days I just go out and I'm just like not there, and other days I'll go out and I'm like, where is this coming from? I feel incredible. And I'll literally talk to you immediately after and I'll say, dude, I felt great today. And your response will be, I know, how come we can't get there all the time? Like this question is basically the Pandora's box of accomplishment, really, physical accomplishment.
And there's now, when I first met you and when I first started cycling with you, I would have to say that was the biggest separator between the two of us. Would you agree with that? As far as like me being able to like
yeah, you were able to tap into a gear, right? You were able to tap into a gear that I couldn't tap into physically. And partly was because I wasn't nearly as conditioned as you were. And this is why I said the last podcast, you ruined my life, because I feel like I just, my biggest drive is to just beat you, really.
But I would say now we're probably a lot closer fitness wise. And I would say we're closer like mental game wise, because I think now you've gotten much, much better at being able to push through the pain and like just click that extra gear when you need it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. I mean, Alec, I want to address Alec here for a minute if he's listening. Man, I thought about this not only to answer your question and help AJ answer the question, but also for my own benefit. Like we do this, AJ and I both do this after a good and a bad performance, whether on the track or off. And it's, what are the I don't know about you, but I sit there and I kind of examine the variables of man, what made me perform like that? Like, and oftentimes I know that I'm going to have a bad day or a good day based on three main things, really: sleep, diet, and hydration, pretty much, which could be diet. But if I don't have, and I think that's a cool part of this is I don't even know if that's accurate, because sometimes I feel like I even write myself or my workout off because I didn't get enough sleep. I'll like go into it thinking,
right,
I only slept for 6 hours last night. I'm not expecting much out of myself, or I didn't get in the meals that I wanted to get in. I didn't get in the macros that I wanted to get in today. So, I'm not expecting that much out of myself. But there's times where I think that, and then I just go bang it out and I surprise myself, and I'll come back and I'll look on Strava or whatever metric I'm using to gauge my performance, and I'm like, oh shit, I top 10 that, or oh wow, I just beat that PR or whatever.
There's different
this
ways
is
to
such
look
a
at that.
loaded,
So
complicated question.
You could take that as like kind of setting the bar low so that, you know, anything you do is an accomplishment. So you go into it and say, well, I'm not feeling that good today. You and AJ, the other AJ, I'm sure hear me say that a lot when we go into Swift. Like, you know, I'm just feeling a little tired, and then next thing you know, like I'm pinning it and I feel good.
Right.
And I know I do that on the dirt bike a lot, but I would say like the first thing that comes to mind is you need to be in the present. Like on the track and off the track, you have to be in the now. So my guess is when Alec was in this situation, he started focusing on hitting his marks and focusing on one corner at a time, one section at a time. He'd focus on the one corner, that corner would finish, he'd focus on the next corner. And next thing you know, the race is over and that person never caught you, or you pulled away from them. That's when I ride my best on the dirt bike. And what's funny is when I started thinking about that, and it's like, all right, it's almost like you start compartmentalizing like the laps or the sections. And instead of worrying about, oh shoot, I have to hold this guy off for 10 laps. How am I going to hold this guy off for 10 laps? If you have that thought, that 10 laps is going to feel like an eternity. Instead, you can just say, okay, and not that you should be worrying about the guy behind you, but, oh, I'm going to hold this guy off for 1 lap. I'm going to hold him off for 3 turns. Next thing you know, those 3 turns are up. Oh, I'm going to hold him off for 3 more turns. It's the same thing when we do the road bike, when we do the Zwifting online or road bike in real life. And how many times have you heard me say that? Oh, I'm going to stick with the front group for 1 more mile.
Right.
All right, I'm just going to stick with them for 1 more mile, and then I'll let them go and I'll drop back. And then next thing you know, I end up finishing the race with the front group.
Right. And that's like one of my notes for this answer on the top of my note sheet for this was the willingness to feel uncomfortable. I think when you're going into competition, a race, or something that you want to perform, you have to embrace the suck. You have to go into it with the mentality that this might not feel good, but if I want to succeed, I need to be uncomfortable. I mean, I think too many times we are expecting it to be easy. I think our nature in life is for things to be easy. And even if you've done a lot of preparation and you've taken AJ's academy class and you're working out and you're fit, you show up to a race, you might have, I think you might have to come to the realization that maybe what you're expecting of yourself, or maybe, what you think you're capable of, maybe is a little too high. Maybe you have to kind of reevaluate where you are and how hard you need to work to succeed. I also think that we can't be discouraged when we start to underperform. And this is something that I really start to focus on when I'm not feeling good. Like if I go out for a ride or I go out for a race or I'm in the woods and I start to kind of feel like I'm slow, I'm not hitting the marks I was expecting, miles or laps or whatever is ticking by and it's just not feeling good. Instead of going to a negative place, what I've been trying to do, and I think it's been helpful, is take that time, like literally use that time when you're starting to not feel good as a moment where you can start picking apart things that you can change in that moment to make you do better. For example, you're out, you're either doing laps, you're in a race, you're riding, whatever the case may be, and you feel like you're tracking behind. You're pinning it, you're doing what you think you can do, but you're still getting gapped, or you're falling behind, or you're not hitting your marks, you're not focusing. Take that time for the next lap, for the next minute, whatever the metric you want, and break down what you think that you're doing wrong and start correcting them little by little. So what I'll do is, if I'm not feeling good, and I'm going to use cycling just because that's what I'm doing the most of, where I'm encountering this, is if I'm feeling slow, if I'm feeling like I'm not on top of it, I'll break out little things at each time and I'll say, can I do this better? For example, if I'm riding, my legs start burning like crazy and I'm feeling like I'm putting way too much effort in and I'm not going as fast as I think I should be, I'll start taking one variable out. I'll look at like my cadence, like how many RPMs my legs are spinning at. I'll start obsessing about that number. Like, am I spinning too fast? Am I spinning too slow and pedaling too hard? Like, where is my balance in that? And I'll start to concentrate on those little pieces of technique to basically realign like where my mind is and where my body can be. And so I think that's a good.
That's bringing you into the now, right? That's
exactly.
Not you.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it.
Thinking about the next lap or the next mile or the next hill. That's you focusing on what you're doing, and it translates to anything. And I could preach this all day long, but I struggle with it as much as anyone. I think single-handedly, the mental game, the mental aspect is what separates me from being one of the top riders in the world. Being a 15th place 450 Supercross rider to a top 3 guy. you know,
Yeah, and
they
how
believe
many?
they're
Yeah,
there. They have it so dialed in. Like I have these doubts all the time, and it's something I practice on. Like I practice and I focus on, and I put so much conscious effort into improving that. And another thing too, like this may be not off topic, but as far as like the mental game goes, like expectations can like don't make your expectations or set your goals based on a metric like of just a number, like a position, a finish, a result. I think that's the probably one of the worst things I've done in the past. I could have had my best night of riding, and you know maybe it was just everyone was riding faster that day, or maybe I made a little mistake and crashed, or whatever the case may be, and the result wasn't there. You can't base your whole day or a whole weekend on that result. You need to pick out the little stuff and and take your wins when you can. Like if there we had a girl at class, Margarita, I was talking about her before, in Ecuador, that she would constantly focus on all the bad things that were happening. She would come off and she would talk to Mateo and he would translate it to me, and it would always be a complaint. And I was like, Margarita, if you just focus when that complaint starts to come into your head, starts to sneak its way into your head, just think of one thing that you could be grateful for, or one thing that you like on the track, like anything. It could be anything, and it will take your mind off of that. If you have, and I was notorious, and I can still be this way. You could have a track with 10 jumps and 20 turns, and if there was one turn and one jump, one little section of that track that I wasn't happy with, all of my focus and all of my energy would be on that one section. I could be on the
right.
whole rest of the track, and guess what I'd be thinking about? I'd be thinking about that one stupid section. I'd be on the line of the race, thinking to myself, "Oh,
Doubting yourself.
I don't know if I want to
Right.
get the whole shot. What if I get the whole shot and I screw up that section? So then I get a bad whole shot because I'm afraid of this section." And it's just a snowball effect. Instead, focus on a section that you do like, and then maybe eventually you'll just forget about the section you don't like, and you'll just naturally improve on it because you're focusing on the here and the now and the things that are, working for you. We could talk all day on this topic. I could.
And for anybody who's even remotely interested in this and can resonate with this question, stick around to this podcast, man, because we're going to have a bunch of guests on that. We're going to talk specifically about this. And, bringing it full circle back to where we started this with rack racing, follow Jay, because he has some tips and tricks into the mental game that I think will resonate with a lot of people. To be able to, and Alec in particular, please go listen to Jay. There are so many techniques that we could spend an entire series on about mental preparation, the mental game, getting yourself focused, getting yourself dialed. Jay wakes up in the morning and he like does a whole routine. It's actually pretty hilarious because he'll act it out like in person in front of his mirror, like exuberating that just positivity, and he has this whole routine. It'd be funny if you could see it, but you got to talk to yourself and be positive about it. But I think you hit a lot of great points, AJ, with focusing on the negative and getting over that part during a bad performance or a subpar performance, or even a performance that you're not as thrilled with as you'd hoped.
Any other tips you would give him specifically in that situation when there's somebody right on your butt?
Absolutely. That's my next point. Is what works for me a lot of times is, and these are little anecdotes, but maybe someone else out there can use them because they've worked for me a lot of times, and some are kind of funny.
Like
when I was younger, well, no, this is what I would do. I always have in the back of my head, I always picture an individual, right? And it depends on the scenario about who I'm picturing. It could be like a direct competitor. It could be you. It could be someone else. It could be someone I'm on the track with or riding with. And I'll say, I will never, ever let that person beat me. It doesn't have to be the fastest. Look, you will show up places and you will genuinely not be the fastest person. So you, or the strongest, or the quickest, or the best. So you have to you have to set realistic expectations in all this. But for clicking into that next gear, you have to pick out somebody who may be just a little bit better than you, maybe a little bit quicker than you, maybe a little bit faster than you, a little stronger. And you say, I will not let him or her beat me. I will not let that happen. And you have to think about that. And you have to get on the edge of where you're comfortable. I think too many times we sit in a level where you're struggling, you're suffering, but how much more do you have to give, right? And anybody who listens to like Joe Rogan's podcast or follows any of the guys that he has on, David Goggins is such an excellent guy to listen to. His philosophy is this: at 100% output, if you're giving 100% of everything that your human body is capable of giving, that means you're dead. That means that you have zero left and you will die. So how much of that 100% gauge are you willing to put into success? That's really what you have to kind of think about. And I like talking about this because it kind of reevaluates where I'm at in my process and my training and my everything. I think just talking about it makes you amped up. I mean, I want to get on the bike right now because I'm thinking to myself, look, when you get done with a ride or a race or a moto or whatever, go to the gym, when you're done, how much have you given? Is it as much as you possibly could give? Why are you there? Are you there to have fun? Are you there to get results? And you could be there to have fun. You could be there to get results. They could be mutually exclusive. I think a really critical thing is evaluate what you're trying to get out of whatever you're doing. And I mean, this is why this is such an expansive topic, because hey, if you want to get stronger, then that's your metric. If you want to look better, then that's your metric. If you want to be faster, that's your metric. There's so many different things you could put, but start with setting a realistic expectation of yourself. And
so if somebody was behind you, if somebody was behind you, are you saying that you would think of them as somebody that you would never, ever let beat you? Like you would pretend that it was that person?
I would pretend that would be that person, or I like to pretend that someone is watching me that will ridicule me until I die if I let them pass me or if they let them be better than me. You know what I mean? Like I go out even on individual efforts. I think like, how are my results going to stack up against anybody else that I'm looking at today? And I'll say, who do I want to be better than? I just say, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be faster. I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to be this than that person. And I'm not going to call any individual out or individuals out, but I just know like that I can, there are, this isn't specific to any one person or one event or anything, but I think a good trick that I like to use is I put myself in a situation where if I'm feeling subpar, I'm like, what if that person what if my nemesis were right next to me? How would I be riding then? Or how would I feel if this person who I know is slower than me beat me? And that allows me to tap into something extra that I maybe wouldn't have necessarily.
I know me personally, like if it's one of the names, like let's just say Adam Enticknap or just like one of the top privateers that I always find myself around. If I know Enticknap's behind me, if I know like Alex Ray or any of these guys are behind me, in my head I say there's no way in a million years that person should beat me. And I believe it.
You believe it to your core, right? And you tell
Absolutely.
yourself that.
But if it were Eli Tomac behind me, I maybe like the right person with the strongest mind could truly believe that, but this is where I struggle. So
Right.
I wouldn't believe that. I would think that's Eli Tomac. He belongs in front of me, which that's not the right way to think.
It's not, and I think that's why this topic is so cool, and why there's so much here that we're gonna have to explore in a lot of detail throughout this podcast. Is why not? What honestly? And I'm asking you this right now and I want your actual answer. Why do you think that Eli Tomac by default should be in front of you? Just by default. Why? Give me 3 bulleted reasons.
Right. Well, and this is funny that you ask a question like that, because my mental coach will do the same thing. And anytime he catches me saying anything that even closely resembles that, he'll ask a question like that, and I can never think of a valid answer.
Isn't that strange? There's no reason. He's not physically dominant over you. There is no actual literal reason why he would be better or faster than you.
None.
And we all put these limitations on ourselves. There's nobody that I know of who doesn't limit themselves by that. And I think that's what's so cool about like our potential as human beings is when we remove those limitations, how far can we go? Why are we setting our bars, individual bars, so low? Or not even low, but artificially low. There's no you could cough up the excuse like, hey, he's on a factory bike, he's got all the support, but as a human being, he's no more physically capable of it than you are.
So, it's funny when you say setting the bar low. My he's at my hypnotist, mental coach, whatever you want to call him. He calls it your thermostat, and he always says my thermostat is set way too low. And it's kind of like that's your benchmark, and that's like your reset. That's your zero. And your thermostat set low, you have to slowly bump that thing up one way or another. So that there is a way to believe, like deep down to your core. And there's a lot of people that can do that. There's guys like, like Vince Freese that are just racers like Vince Freese knows how to race, and he knows how to race because he truthfully doesn't care about who's behind him. He doesn't care. Doesn't affect him one bit. And who's a better rider, who probably would arguably have more skill? I would say me all day long, but who's going to beat me or who's going to win in a race over the past 4 years of our career? Vince Freese, every single time.
Right.
Because he is so focused on what he's doing. He's not fazed by anybody else. And I envy that.
Well, let this be as much of an answer to Alex's question and a discussion in there. Let it be help to you also to understand, like, we could conquer this. You can conquer this. Everybody can conquer this, right? I mean, and we've had discussions. I think, another little technique we could talk about is just the pre-visualizing what you're gonna do, and that kind of goes back to being in the present. But before a harder performance, before a race, before whatever it is, go through the visual. Imagine it. Put yourself there mentally. Do a form of meditation. Not a lot of people know about this, but AJ and I will get on the phone before a race, and we'll go through this. I won't even be there, but we'll go through it. We'll try to put him in that mentality before he even shows up for track walk. Just put yourself there. Smell everything that's around you when you're on the line. Visualize people next to you. Literally think of yourself at the gate, wherever it is. This is talking about moto, but picture who's on your left. Picture who's on your right. Picture the gate dropping. Imagine touching elbows in bars with those people next to you and edging them out. Literally, I get amped thinking about this, dude. My heart rate's literally starting to accelerate a little bit. Thinking like being in that position, getting the adrenaline going right off the bat. because you are going to get there and you're going to see the person to your left and your right, and you're going to know you've already seen it in your mind's eye. You are ahead of them at the first turn. You're ahead of them at the hole shot. Whatever it is, that pre-visualization, put yourself there, get yourself there mentally ahead of time. So when you're there, when in real life, you've done it before. The practice is done. You're there to compete right off the rip.
And for those of you that are listening and thinking, oh, well, I've tried it and it doesn't work for me, or I'm not good at it, it takes practice. And because for me, and this still happens to me, but I have to really, really focus and practice this. When I would visualize, and when I still do visualize, it would start out going well, and then I would crash, or I would mess up, and somebody would go by. In my visualization, I would visualize myself blowing it. And
well, that could be just as powerful in the opposite direction, right?
Right. But the way to practice this is when it's just a thought. And this is, I'm not a mental coach, but I've done it. I mean, at our level, it's so mental that like I can definitely help people on this subject. When you get to that, when you have that thought, when you mess up, you literally think to yourself, that's a thought. Okay. Just let it go. And then you continue your visualization. Or I don't know if this is the wrong thing to do. Just start it over and then do it again until you get it right. And if a bad thought slips in your head, you just think that's just a thought, let it go. And it sounds silly, but when my palms will sweat just sitting here talking about it. Like sitting on the line in Supercross, for me in the past, has been one of the worst feelings you can possibly imagine. Why would that be one of the worst feelings you can possibly? There's a million people out there that could only dream to be in my shoes, And I'm sitting there like, and I would rather be anywhere else but on that line, because like I have this feeling in the pit of my stomach, like this is the worst. And I've gotten much, much better at it this past year, especially like when I talk to people about 2018 season, yeah, results didn't go the way I wanted them to. But results aside, everything else improved. I lined up on the line and I was like yelling in my helmet and like actually believing it, like yelling and feeling good and ready to go. At straight rhythm, I think a couple of times you could hear me like yell as I was pushing my bike up to the thing, and then I'd sit in my bike and I would yell. And I believed it, like I felt good about it. When these thoughts slip into my head, and they do all the time, I just say to myself, it's just a thought, let it go. And by the time I've said that, I've already forgot what the bad thought was.
You nailed it. And I think, we did this at Daytona, you and I were on the line, and I said, get loud. And if you start demonstrating like physical confidence, whether it's how you're walking, how, the motions you're doing, and even like the verbalizing, the yelling, the screaming, you know what that does? Not only does it put you at a higher mental place, but guess what else it does? Everybody around you who hears that starts planting doubt in them. So that now they're thinking, AJ's here to play. He's not here to just line up and ride this. He's here because in Daytona, we practiced this. Obviously, you're just coming off of a punctured lung and some other injuries, so it didn't get the result you were looking for, and we have some other reasons why.
But that was
you still did.
Like we progressed a lot throughout that day. Like
you sure did, and you were riding on a broken fork. Let's not forget that.
That's right. Yeah,
you forgot about that.
Huh? The week before, like there was a lot of things that were going wrong, but didn't really focus on that. I think I missed the main by one spot, and I felt like good about it. Like I got better and better throughout the day. One thing you said to me that stuck too, and I forget what it was exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was like make them work for it.
That's exactly what I said.
Like make them work for it.
I told you, do not make it easy for anybody else on that track. Make it hard for them. It's yours to lose.
There's certain like mantras or things I say in my head that really stick, and that's one of like I've said that on the line a lot after that. Like make them work for it. Just make them work for it, you know. And like that's all it takes. That's all you got to think.
That's it. That's it. Man, that's I'm so glad that this question came in. And it's something that we battle all the time, and everybody can benefit from it. And it doesn't even have to apply to physical efforts. It doesn't have to apply to races. It doesn't have to apply to workouts. It's really anything. That mental fortitude can get you to such an elevated level, well outside of physical accomplishment.
And you know, and one way to make yourself feel a little bit better about it too, like even Alec in this situation. Granted, you're more in the pressure situation because you're in front of this guy, but think about what he's feeling. I mean, I'm sure he's almost equally as nervous as you are, or equally as unconfident if that's the case. What, like the way I like to describe it is, I'm friends with a lot of these guys. Like I have them come do my classes, like Adam Cincerello, Dean Wilson, a lot of these top guys. And the beauty of it is they all struggle with the same exact things. So
right.
When you have any of those negative thoughts, or if somebody's coming up behind you, just, you know, they're human. They're human. Make them work for it. Focus on what you're doing. Make them work for it. One corner at a time. Next thing you know, the race is going to be over. And you know what happens too. And this is a cool little tip. And this is like the Vince Freese technique, is he makes them work for it so hard that they start making the mistakes to where then he actually
he rattles them.
He totally throws them out of their rhythm. So that could have very well been what Alec did to whoever was behind him. That this person might have caught him. He held strong for a lap or 2 laps. He started to get more in the flow, and the guy behind him just got rattled, and then maybe got arm pump or got winded or tired or out of his flow and just drop back. It doesn't take much.
And let that maybe be the last takeaway today for this is, as much as you can affect your own mental game, and you can try to do what you can to tap into that next level for yourself, also think about throwing everybody off of their game, because they're dealing with the same thing, like AJ just said. And if you could get into their head and take that advantage away from them, well, you just gained yourself another advantage. So I think that the focus on what you have at hand, I think we covered a lot of great things for a first go at it. I keep saying this, but this is going to be a good theme. Question. Yeah, I know, right? We'll have to hopefully won't get so many questions that are this in detail. But like I said, we're gonna have some cool guests on that are gonna go further into this. I think it's such an important thing in life and in performance to be able to elevate yourself to that next level. But if you don't listen to anything else, I mean, eat your Wheaties and sleep for 8 hours a day, right?
That I was talking to the class at Ecuador, like, not to start a whole nother conversation here, but man, if there's anything that's underrated, it is sleep.
Right.
Get your 7 hours. If you don't, you can't totally freak out about it, but I do.
Yeah, it's hard with a 5-month-old now for me, but I'm trying, man.
Yeah, you can't dwell on it if you don't get it, but you need it. You definitely need it. But on that note, we should probably start wrapping things up. We're 83 minutes.
Yeah.
This bad boy.
Yeah. So everybody, thanks for checking us out again. Episode 2 coming to an end. Thank you again to Jay Kavanaugh at Rack Racing. AJ, I'm meeting up with Jay on Thursday, so we'll have to debrief after I link up with him.
Awesome. That should be interesting.
It will.
Any meetup with Jay is an interesting one.
It's awesome. A great time.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
But guys, I definitely send in your questions. And what's the email for them to send in their questions?
Questions.cat, podcast@gmail.com. And we'll do our best to answer them. I mean, if we start getting a flood of questions, we're gonna cherry pick to fit kind of the theme, but we'll try to respond to everybody, at least acknowledge that we got the question. We both have access to that email, so we'll be checking on it. And yeah.
Alrighty, episode 2 in the books.
Remind everybody again when your classes are?
We got Tomahawk MX Monday night, November 12th from 2 to 5 p.m. That's only $100. So get in on that. You could just email catandzeroracing@gmail.com to RSVP. And then we have Deep Woods MX in Warrenton, North Carolina. That's November 16th and 17th, which is a Saturday, Sunday, I believe. And contact Deep Woods MX directly to get signed up for that one. And then that's it for me. I think as far as training other riders goes, I'm going to, after that, start focusing on myself. Supercross.
Beautiful. Yes, alrighty. Rack Racing. Check them out. Random Act of Kindness. RAK-racing.com. AJ, we'll check in with you soon, buddy.
All right. Toodaloo.
Adios.